What's up, everybody? Welcome on into the Slate Friday edition. I'm joined by the award-winning Jeff Ulrich and Matt LaMarca. Just esteemed, successful people in the betting and DFS space. Wow. Adam Kaufman here with you. It's true. It's all true. Yep. Give him a golf clap, especially Jeff, because he's the golf guy. We're going to get into a lot of NFL,
apparently,
maybe.
According to the internet, I'm the hockey guy, pal.
That's true. You're a hockey guy, too. So maybe, just maybe, at the end of the show, we're with you until 6 Eastern. So it's not even 40 minutes at this point. Maybe toward the end of the show, we'll mix in a little bit of NHL for tonight, as well as NBA as well. You got a robust slate in the association after a very quiet night last night with just the one game. But where we're going to start last night, guys, and we won't go too in-depth because it's done. It's nothing to preview. What's happened has happened, is that the Thursday night week 13 kickoff between Buffalo and New England in what was a remarkably boring game in Foxborough, that, as expected, the Bills won pretty comfortably at that. They only won by 14. It felt like about 40. It's kind of funny. I was on the show with Gary and yesterday, and we were debating whether it's going to be close. Do you take the 3.5 or 4? Where, landslide. Like, there was no question in my mind Buffalo was going to win this game, guys. And what it really hammered
Must have
home,
made a lot of money.
What it really hammered home was that New England is just so perfectly mediocre. Like, obviously not good. I don't even think bad. Just like good enough to beat the bad teams, hang with the okay teams, and just be reminded of who they are against the good teams like Buffalo that didn't even play that great. Did you learn anything new in that game about the Bills with respect to their contender status?
The Bills, no. For my money, again, when the Bills play their best game, they are the best team in football. The problem is that we don't see their best game on a super consistent basis. Like, I wouldn't even say we saw it last night. They still had a turnover, right? Like, turnovers have really been an issue for this team. So I think when they do run up, there's only a handful of teams that can really play with them. When they run into a Kansas City or a Cincinnati or maybe even a Miami, like, they're going to have to play a little bit better than we've seen from them. But for the time being, they're in great shape. It doesn't really matter. They're cruising along. The bigger thing is just, like you said, I think it cements the fact that this Patriots team is just not nearly as good as their reputation was becoming, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. Most of the metrics heading into last week's game versus the Vikings painted the Patriots as one of the best defensive units in the league. And I think now with, two pretty average performances, even last week's against the Vikings was probably more bad than it was average. Yeah. Like, it's pretty fair to say that their numbers are inflated because they got to feast on a pretty weak schedule.
Yeah, and we won't really have that conversation just because Gary and I already had it yesterday. But if you look at their opponents, if you actually go like week by week in New England's schedule, it's exactly that. They have feasted on the bad teams, and you put them up against even a decent team with an elite wide receiver like a Minnesota with Jefferson, or obviously, Buffalo is elite almost all the way around, but a Stephon Diggs, you put a really good challenge against them and they crumble. And it's not just this year. It was the same thing last year when they were, a top 5 defense in the NFL statistically. Frauds, paper champs defensively, Jeff.
I mean, they're what are they, 6-6 now? Like they're not terrible. I mean, don't paint them out to be terrible. They lost to the Bills. It's not
like I said, they're mediocre. They are just
they're probably above average, to be honest. Like they're not terrible. They're also in like the toughest division in football. So let's give them a small break. There again, but you're right. I mean, like the Bills went through a bit of a rough patch, and we had some questions. Josh Allen's injury, and they've been banged up on defense, and they played through it all. And I think this is just a reminder, like the Bills are like a really good team, and we got confirmation of that. And people probably forgot, and they got sucked into the Patriots getting points and stuff. And I mean, you're not wrong about the Patriots. Like I think again, they can go out, they can hang with teams like Minnesota, but when it comes down to it, like, yeah, they don't deserve to be anywhere near the elite teams. So fair enough.
Did Jeff ever think he'd have to come on this show and defend the Patriots against me? That's what I want to. Well, give him a break here, Kaufman. Settle down. They're in the toughest.
I mean, there's a ton of teams we could talk about being terrible. It's just like
yeah. They're not at the bottom of the league. They are just perfectly middle of the pack. The Bills, though, plus 450. I'm looking at the DraftKings Sportsbook team futures for Super Bowl champs. We're showing it to you right now. The Chiefs and Bills, they are tied at the top at plus 450, as mentioned. Eagles right behind them, obviously no longer doing what they were doing in terms of being undefeated. They've taken a little minor step back, but still obviously a very, very good team. If you were looking at these odds just in general, and we'll start to get into the Sunday slate and all of that, but if you're just examining futures going into week 13 with one game in the rear view now, do you feel any certain way you like to has the sort of up and down nature of Buffalo over the last month plus, has that changed anything? Would you even want to place a bet on a team that's sitting there in the top 3-4 odds to begin with, LaMarca? Is there a long shot you would prefer to eye?
My favorite bet on the board is the Dallas Cowboys at plus 800. I just think that team is super complete, right? They can do everything that you need to do on a football field to win games. If I'm talking just about the AFC, I would take the Bengals at 18-1 before I would take the Bills or the Chiefs. I do think that Buffalo is better than Kansas City. Kansas City still has some major question marks on defense. And as we have seen from them the past few years, having just Patrick Mahomes is not enough to get you to the Super Bowl. It's close, but you need a little bit more than that. So I think that the Bills are the better value of those two top teams, but I'll take the Bengals at 18-1 for sure. I think that they have just as much offensive upside as those top teams. And, defensively, they've been better than the Chiefs this year. So
what do you think, Moose?
Full agreement on the Bengals, man. I think this is actually a really good week to bet them too. I don't think their odds are going to drop much, even if they do end up losing a close game to KC, and I think they'll win the game anyways. So I'd also actually take a little look at Joe Burrow's MVP odds. This team's really good right now. I mean, they're playing systematically well on defense. They're limiting opponents when they need to, and they don't have a bunch of stars back there, but they didn't have a bunch of stars back there last year. Their O-line is giving Joe Burrow time over the last 3 games. It really improved. Give Joe Burrow time, he basically leads the league in like every important stat. So, getting Jamar Chase back. The win last week really impressed me. Like in bad weather against Tennessee, a team that has a good pass rush and a good defensive line. No Jamar Chase, and they just took care of business, man. Like it's a pretty solid team forming. Joe Burrow is really like a top 3 quarterback right now, and I think they're undervalued. So yeah, agree there, and really don't hate the Dallas Cowboys call either. NFC is wide open. Why not just take the team of the top 3 teams that have the biggest odds? I mean, I think that's completely fine. So yeah.
All right, let's get into the Joe Burrow MVP odds. We're showing it to you plus 650. So Pat Mahomes.
Was it plus 650 now?
No, that's most passing yards.
Yeah. I was like, okay,
I'm sorry. Yeah,
I think he's like plus 1400.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, why is Jalen Hurts 200-1 in the MVP market? Then I figured it out.
My mistake. I was on player futures. Awards. Joe Burrow plus 1400, like
Yeah.
you said. So he's fifth. Mahomes, either way, Mahomes is the favorite. In this case, plus minus 150. Let's take a look at the
Short line.
slate, though. And obviously, you guys have talked at length about these games coming up this weekend and past opportunities throughout the week. You've written about it, all of that. I have my thoughts and questions that I want to get your guys' thoughts on. But before we get to me, let's obviously start with you being the featured guest of this show. So, Jeff, do you have any favorite bets going into the week, whether it's, obviously a team that you want to bet, a player prop, whatever it may be?
So we already talked about Cincinnati, but I mean, the ATS record, it's up to 22-10 over the last 2 years. They're 15-7 ATS since 2021 against non-division opponents. They're at home here. I talked about the O-line. KC also, we're relying on like Justin Watson, Juju Smith-Schuster. I know it's Mahomes and Kelsey, and they'll get theirs, but I think that the Bengals ultimately prevail here. I just don't understand this line. I just don't understand why the Bengals are underdogs. I think they're getting no respect. The money is coming in on the Chiefs too, which is great. So no one's really confident in the Bengals here. And I think people are just completely overlooking the fact this is a really good team. And Joe Burrow's playing at a high level. Like that. Also really like the Chargers in the late game too. Still would like to see, I don't know the exact status of Josh Jacobs, but just the fact that he's banged up, that he had a heavy usage game. And literally, as I'm talking, the Bengals went from +1.5 to +2.5. So it almost feels like news just dropped. But anyways, the Raiders, bad pass rush here. Justin Herbert's averaged 305 and 2.6 passing touchdowns in 5 career games against the Raiders. He's had really solid success when Keenan Allen's been in the lineup. So I think the Chargers, they're just the side I want to back there too.
Lamarca, before you answer that same question, what's your record now? How'd you do last week?
I went 3-2 last week. So I am now 47-18 for the year, I think. I don't know. The article will be up in a little bit. I literally just submitted my picks a few minutes before hopping on the show.
Okay,
so,
very good.
I'm with Jeff on the Bengals for sure. I like that side. Not one of my favorite sides this week, but they are in the write-up. So they're in my top 5. My favorite pick, I got 2. You want the gross one or the one that I think that you'll enjoy?
How about the gross one first? I want
to see if your gross one is the same as my gross one, because I have a really gross one.
The gross one is the Indianapolis Colts plus 10.5 on Sunday Night Football against the Cowboys. I just talked about how much I love the Cowboys, right? I think they are the best team in the NFC. It would not shock me if they won the Super Bowl. But I think this is a lot of points to be giving Indianapolis. They have one loss this season by double digits where Matt Ryan was the starting quarterback. That came back in week 2, and it was a game where they were missing like half their roster. Jacksonville was the team that beat it. They shut them out 24-0. And Jacksonville has also, they look better. Like that loss doesn't look quite as bad as it did at the time. Since Jeff Saturday took over, they have a 5-point win against the Raiders on the road. They have a 1-point loss to the Eagles in a game that they kind of led throughout. And then they lost to the Steelers, another team that I think is really undervalued, that I like a lot this week. And they had a chance to win that game late. So I think that this is too many points. Like, I don't think the Colts are ready to roll over and die. They're still fighting. And now that Matt Ryan's back at quarterback and they don't have just a dumpster fire with Sam Ehlinger, I think that they're going to, keep most games competitive. So I'll take the 10.5.
That being the high spread on the week too. All right, what's the one that we're going to get excited about that we like?
Well, I think it's going to be much easier to make a case for the San Francisco 49ers minus 4 points. You've got a team that has been so dominant defensively. They haven't allowed a point in the second half of any of their last 4 games, going up against a team that I think has become overvalued because of a soft recent schedule. You look at their last 5 games, they've won them all, but 6-point win against Pittsburgh before they had TJ Watt back in the lineup. a 4-point win against Detroit, a 3-point win against Chicago. Like there's not a ton of on paper results from the Dolphins that you say, wow, this team's really cruising right now. Now you factor in that they are going to be missing 2 offensive tackles, including their star left tackle, against a really good 49ers defense. I just don't see that ending well for Miami.
How about if we're, and this sort of dovetails a little bit into the DFS portion of the conversation as well, but just a game that, not that I think it's going to be a good game. In fact, I don't think it's going to be a good game at all, but a game that really fascinates me, interests me, just, purely as a fan and Narrative Street and all of that, is this Browns-Texans game. You got the return of Deshaun Watson. It's in Houston. First game for Cleveland. Guy hasn't played in like 6 years. There's 7-point favorites. The Browns obviously on the road. To me, it's such an easy money line bet for Cleveland, but I would take them with the points too. What are the expectations? It should be an easy win for Cleveland. So I don't even so much care what you think about the game itself, unless you just patently disagree with that, Lamarca. But I'm curious what we should expect from Deshaun Watson in this first game, because when it comes to projections, which, I know we're a little early still, but Watson, when it comes to quarterbacks on the main slate, the only guys who are right now, what I'm looking at, projected to do better than him DFS wise, Mahomes, Burrow, Hurts, Fields. That's it. Deshaun Watson, top 5 quarterback. What do we think?
So I do think that this game is interesting. I don't necessarily think it's interesting for the same reasons that you do, but I think that with the Texans, you can tell yourself 2 different stories, right? I've heard multiple sharp people that I really respect, say that this is the Texans Super Bowl and that they are going to get up for this contest. On the other hand, I don't know if that matters, right? Because the Texans are so bad.
Yeah.
They're clearly tanking in my eyes. That's the only decision. That's the only reason you would start Kyle Allen after last week's performance. They don't have Brandon Cooks. They don't have Derek Stingley. And even if Deshaun Watson is rusty, which I think is a very reasonable expectation for someone who hasn't played football in 2 years, all he should really have to do in this contest is turn around and hand the ball to Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's one of the best running backs in football. The Texans haven't been able to stop a running back in all year. I think Cleveland wins this game convincingly. They're in my 5 picks for the week, but there are some sharp whisperings about this being a good spot for Houston.
Yeah, this is probably the only spot we're going to disagree on the week, because I actually think this is a good spot for the Texans. As much as, yes, everyone's worried about Nick Chubb, like Dameon Pierce,
banged up.
The Browns just as bad against the run, just as bad. And this is a very good spot for Dameon Pierce to get off the ground and perhaps just take control of this game himself. Like, the Texans have been losing big, but it's really been because their defense has just been allowing massive plays and just getting so far behind that they can't get Pierce going. But if they do keep this close and they get up and they get a couple stops early and there's Watson rust, I think the Texans can easily hang with this. And the Browns are starting a team I really want to trust 7 points on the road when it comes down to it. I mean, Deshaun Watson, I get it, but clearly the Browns are a better team here, but this is not a spot I would want to be taking 7 points. So would be going against Lamarca here. I'm not even sure if I'm going to bet this one necessarily. There's a lot of factors here. I don't think you need to, but I do like Dameon Pierce a lot for DFS this week. I'll say that.
I will say I got this line at 6.5 because I took it on Sunday night.
Sure.
And I think that's the number you want, right? Mm-hmm. If it stays at 7, I have some qualms about Cleveland, because the thing is, yes, I do think Deshaun Watson is better than Jacoby Brissett, but Jacoby Brissett has played fine this year. He's like a top 10 quarterback in terms of PFF grade. So I'm not expecting, Deshaun Watson to come in and it's going to be like pouring gasoline on a flame, right? I think that, like Jeff said, the problems are really with Cleveland's defense. So I think Kyle Allen is probably the worst quarterback that's going to be playing this week. That's really more the reason why I'm choosing to side with Cleveland. But Jeff's concerns are very well founded, and I think that at 7, there's definitely reason to take
I mean,
note of.
look, when we're talking about spreads, numbers are everything. So perfectly
Yeah.
reasonable to make that the thesis of your argument.
I don't know about you guys, and I'll start with you on this one, LaMarcus, simply because you are a fan to some degree, a supporter of this team. The Jets Vikings game interests me in not so much as a game, but when I'm looking at the numbers, the 3-point spread. I just, if you asked me to guess the spread of this game going in without looking at it, I don't know what I would have said. Maybe something like 4.5 or even 5. 3 really surprises me, and I wonder how much of that is like, yeah, the Jets look great with Mike White, but it's still Mike White, and there's still a road team, and Michael Carter, as much stock as you may or may not want to put in the running back position, he is doubtful to play. It's not like you have a great option after him necessarily. And the Vikings, yeah, I know they weren't at their best and kind of barely beat the Patriots on Thanksgiving, but they still won the game. They're still a 9-win team, 8-win team, whatever it is that they are. They still have Jefferson. Thielen's been hot of late. It's just kind of crazy to me that this is a virtual pick 'em at home.
Well, a couple of things. First, you need to stop thinking that 3 points, like you're not getting 3 points for home field anymore. We've talked about this multiple times this year, and I'm tired of having to correct you about it.
I know.
Okay.
It's staying with me. Go on.
2, the Sharps have been anti-Minnesota all year. You look at their performance, their win-loss record, it does not match the underlying metrics for this team. They've gotten lucky. That's the reason why they've won as many games as they have. And 3, the Sharps really respect the Jets defense. And I'm not saying Mike White is the answer. Like I expected Mike White to play really well last week because Chicago has a terrible defense. I don't know if I expected him to play as well as he did, but Minnesota's defense is not much better. I mean, Mac Jones had the best game of his season playing against Minnesota. So I think it's a spot where Mike White can find success again. And the Jets match up really well with them. They have the best cornerback in football right now. And I'm not saying that Sauce Gardner can shut down Justin Jefferson, but if there's anyone in football that can slow him down, it's the Sauce Man.
Jeff?
Yeah, this is a game where I'm happy just to not bet it. I think this number is probably correct, but I also think that the Vikings, you make valid points about bringing up, like, it's Mike White's second start. We don't know that much about him. There's concerns, but the Jets have the best unit in this game as well with their defense. So I think the Vikings probably win a close game, but the 3 points seems legit. So it's just not one. I dove into it trying to figure out a way. I just don't want to bet it. I think the number's probably correct. The Vikings are semi-frauds, but they win games, and the Jets have a really good defense, and we just don't know what they're going to do on offense week to week. So I think it's completely fine to say this number's at 3 is like probably where it should be, and just move on.
When it comes to DFS, and we can sort of transition a little bit into some individual players, I always ask you guys this question. It always interests me when it comes to lineup building. I look at the game that has the highest spread, and the Jaguars and Lions. Not exactly a superstar-laden game, but the Jaguars and Lions, 51 is the point total in that game. Jeff, are you going to go point chasing in that one? And this isn't the high game of the week. I mean, that's the Chiefs and Bengals, but and there are a couple, the Chargers and Raiders as well. But 51, the Lions and Jaguars. What do we think of this? Yeah.
So of the 3 games that have point totals of 50 or more, this is probably the one that I feel the worst about going over on. And it's not like I'm not going to bet the under on it either, but when you look at this game, both offenses they're the better units. Like the defenses are ranked outside of the Jags rush defense. The other sides of the ball are all ranked below, like bottom 10 in terms of rush, pass DVOA on the Lions, pass DVOA on the Jags are terrible. So their offenses are actually been pretty efficient. Like I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to have a good game. Travis Etienne's playing now. At the same time, we're trusting Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence to get us 52 points or whatever it is. you don't have to do this. Like, you don't have to bet the over here. So
You don't have to
no,
do this.
I would much rather bet the over in the KC and Bengals game. And I get it, like it's a public bet, but I just feel way more confident about that one. Or even the Chargers and the Raiders. I think that's probably actually one of my favorite over spots. I would bet that total over. This one, I just find it's a good DFS spot. It's good to take a risk in big GPPs. I don't feel the need to go over on this total. I don't really have a huge lean on this game either. This is just another one where, you know, if you got a lean or you like you know, the way the line's been playing at home, fine. But I think there's better spots.
In the same way, Lamarca, and this is me, not you, so I don't want you to think I'm projecting upon you when I say this. In the same way that some of us have to be reminded, like, hey, you don't need to tweet about this. You can just sit this one out. You don't have to bet everything, right? Like Jeff is saying.
Yeah, for sure.
You could stay away from this one if it seems, you know, too ugly or too good to be true or whatever it may be.
I think the line's pretty fair. I mean, the Lions have just played in a ton of shootouts when they've been at full strength this year. And by at full strength, I mean they have Amon-Ra St. Brown in the lineup. Like, whenever that guy has played, their offense has scored points. And when their offense scores points, the other offense scores points. So I think it can go over. My bigger issue with this game is just that I think when you look at the 3 high totaled games, it's easily going to be the highest owned for DFS purposes because it's just so much more affordable. All the players are so much cheaper. You know, if you wanted to game stack the Chiefs and the Bengals, you're going to have to pay up at quarterback. You're going to have to pay up at receiver. And, you know, you might want to use Travis Kelce, who's the most expensive tight end. Same goes for the Chargers and the Raiders. A lot of expensive players in that game. This one, you're really playing some pretty cheap dudes for the most part, right? I mean, St. Brown is 7,100. He's the most expensive guy by a pretty comfortable margin. So I think that most people will be stacking this game, which is why I like the other two just for leverage purposes.
St. Brown is, other than Josh Jacobs, the highest projected non-quarterback this week. Mahomes and Burrow, guys that are above them, obviously. Which brings me back to Josh Jacobs, actually. I wanted to talk about him for a little while. Jeff, I think it was, that brought him up earlier in the show. So Jacobs is projected for about 22.5 points going up his Raiders against the Chargers. He is the top projected owned player in a quarter of lineups as we sit here right now at $7,900. My question, I guess, is, do you agree with that, Jeff? Like, how much of this is recency bias? He exploded for a career game last week. He's had quite a few of them, and he's sitting atop the NFL in rushing. Or is it the matchup, or just a happy combination of both?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. I mean, the Chargers have one of the worst rush defenses in the league. It's not a big surprise now. We've been talking about it for like 6 straight weeks. And then, you know, just Josh Jacobs has been, it's not just that it's not just part of it is the game last week, but it's really not just that. His volume is, it's basically, you know, what you call like Christian McCaffrey. Like, I mean, he's not just getting 25 carries a game, prime Christian McCaffrey, not San Francisco Christian McCaffrey, who's turned into like a gadget player apparently. But I mean, he's getting like the usage in the pass game, right? Like the targets have gone up since like week 10. So everything is pretty much there for Josh Jacobs. He also just looks insanely good running the ball. And, you know, his price is still like, for some reason, he should probably be the most expensive running back on the slate. He's not. So yeah, it does make sense. I think the only thing here is just the injury issue. Like I said, he's coming off like a 40 touch game in an OT performance, and he definitely strained his calf at the end of it. There's a scenario where, you know, the Chargers get up early. Josh Jacobs doesn't feel so good around the second quarter, and goodbye. I think that as the highest owned player, you really need to, like, unfortunately, like, you've got to take a stance on him. You know, am I going to take a little bit of injury risk and just go with the field? I think it's actually a good spot to go against them, which is a little scary as well. But you know, when you start to factor in injuries on high usage backs, things can go south pretty quick. So very interesting player for DFS this week.
Lamarca?
Yeah, I think he's the best like per dollar option when you are starting to talk about the stud players at the position. Jeff hits the nail on the head. Like, the usage in the passing game this year has been a big difference maker for him. And he's just been much more efficient on the ground than we've ever seen from him, averaging over 5 yards per carry. He leads the league in rushing. Unrelated, but it's going to be fascinating to see what kind of market he has in the offseason, right? Because the Raiders declined his 5th-year option, which you almost never see for a first-year player. And I wonder if they're regretting that at this point, because I think he's going to he's definitely opened some eyes with the way he's played.
Only 24 too. I thought I just looked it up. I thought he was 26. He's 24. So we don't see this with running backs very often. Like you said, like guys in their actual prime with like lots of good years left hitting the market. Usually with running backs, they hit it around 27, 28, and then they kind of got to fight and claw for that contract. Jacobs is legit. Like you don't get, this is going to be fascinating. Right.
I just think his story, his arc this year has been so fascinating. From
his
that
character development.
Dude, we were in best ball drafts. There was a point where Josh Jacobs would just keep falling and falling and falling because everyone was
same thing with season long.
Was convinced it was going to be some sort of weird rotation with Josh McDaniels, which it actually, that's the funny thing. It actually was the first 3 games. There was that weird rotation. And then a couple guys got hurt. He had to play Jacobs more. And Jacobs was like, oh yeah, I actually am the best running back.
Right. Maybe just in case you guys didn't realize, I do have hands attached to my body and I can use them.
No, but that's exactly my point.
So
like I remember season-long drafts. I'm in leagues with both of you bozos, and like we're just watching like round by round. He was like kryptonite. Nobody wanted to draft Josh Jacobs because it's like, oh, he's in a share, he's in a committee.
He's going to lose work to the legendary Amir Abdullah.
And the funny thing is, like I have him on some of my basketball teams. I even have him in a season long, but it wasn't like I was actively getting it. It was just like, okay, well, he's there, and I can't believe he's still here. Like the 8th round, I guess I'll take a shot on him. But it's definitely like for fantasy, he's turned into like the story of the year in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. All right, in the interest of time, LaMarca, favorite plays this week in terms of DFS individual players, anyone that we haven't talked about?
I'm going to go to the other side of that contest. I like Austin Eckler at running back. I think that he's not going to fly, completely under the radar, but I do think he'll have a bit less ownership than Jacobs. And you want to talk about a role in the passing game. My goodness, is this guy involved in the passing game? At least 12 targets in 4 of his last 6. No Mike Williams again this week. The Raiders are dead last in the league in DVOA against running backs, pass defense DVOA against running backs. Like it's a spot again where I think Eckler gets to double-digit targets. He should certainly see more than the 5 carries he got last week. And if he punches one into the end zone plus all the receiving work, like for me, he's probably got the highest upside at the position.
Jeff, what about you? Any favorites?
So I actually, again, like sticking with the running back position, I actually really like Derrick Henry this week. Philly, again, it's kind of like the Jacobs pivot play. Philly's rush DVOA really tanking last few weeks. Derrick Henry's already hit a career high in receptions. So he's more involved. He's turned into a bit of a PPR back in a lot of ways. And I think he's a great pivot play. I don't think many people are going to use him. And you can stack that game. Like AJ Brown's in a revenge spot. Jalen Hurts doesn't have super high ownership. But I do like Derrick Henry a lot. I think that's a really interesting DFS play. And there's probably a couple other ones there. Hawkinson at tight end, I don't mind. Trying to remember the other guys I wrote up in my article. Just go read my article at the Fantasy Grind. It's out there. I've tweeted it.
There you go. Well, to pay off the tease before we go in the next couple of minutes, let's quickly hit basketball and hockey, and we'll do hoops first, LaMarca. We'll let you handle that one. I will defer to you, whether it's DFS or Sportsbook. Do you have a favorite player to tonight?
Okay. We'll go to DFS because that's what I wrote.
My royally putting you on the spot here?
Yeah, we're fine. I wrote about the DFS slate. I can talk DFS. Okay. I think that the Pelicans game looks pretty appealing. They're taking on the Spurs, 233-point total. Both teams in that game are going to be pretty shorthanded. The Pelicans are still without Brandon Ingram. The Spurs are without a bunch of different people. So I think there's some nice value options potentially. You've got guys like Zach Collins, Keita Bates-Diop, Isaiah Roby for the Spurs. You've got Trey Murphy, Najee Marshall potentially for the Pelicans. So I think that's the game you really want to kind of make your primary focus tonight. Get in some of the value plays on that squad, and then that allows you to sort of pay up for whatever other studs you're looking for.
Moose, how about on the ice? Same question, sportsbook or DFS?
I'll just go to the sports book because I haven't looked at the DFS slate at all. It's a pretty small DFS slate anyways. So honestly, this is kind of a, like what you call, I don't want to say boring, but it is a little bit of a boringish slate. Got Winnipeg and Columbus. I would probably take the under in that game, 6.5. Jets at home, just so good defensively this year. Connor Hellebuck back in fine form. And then I kind of like the Islanders catching the Predators. Predators had a huge win against the Devils last night, but back-to-back situation. Islanders have been really good. They got Sorkin and net. I think that the number there to just take them on the pure money line. It's short. You're paying juice, but it's a tough spot for the Predators to come in after last night. So those would probably be my two top just from what I looked at today.
Well, we covered an awful lot over the last 35, 40 minutes. Make sure you go back, relive it, get some advice, write it all down as best you want, because you got plenty of time to make bets and make your lineups as it relates to the NFL. A little bit less time, obviously, for NBA and NHL tonight, but it's just about going to do it for our show. We've got another Madden simulation coming your way starting in just a couple of minutes, 6 Eastern, between the Ravens and Saints. Drew Brees' alma mater, the New Orleans Saints. Good news, he was not struck by lightning. In case
that's not an alma mater.
That's it.
Purdue is his alma mater, you dummy.
It's his NFL alma mater. How about that? Can I do that? Can I spin that?
Sure. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. I'm tired.
Tampa
All
Bay
right.
Lightning are his alma mater now, you know, because of the lightning.
Yeah, because the bolts that came down and didn't hit him. Okay, we're gonna go. Thanks to Daniel, our technical director, Eamon, our producer, attempting to keep us in check here, and of course Moose, the sax man, Kaufman. The sweat comes your way Sunday morning for a full look at the NFL slate, maybe even a look to Sunday night as well. So make sure you check that out. Join us on the DraftKings YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter pages, and then the slate will return Monday afternoon. We'll see you later.